pretty much every coach out there that is good and reliable and smart does it like this. Increase the food. You're getting stronger. Great. Coach, can I use Anadrol? No. No, you're not there yet. No, bro. You're not at 6,000 calories yet. You can still eat more. And now we're finally at nutrition. And it only took, 25 minutes before we got to this point. Sorry for all the disclaimers, but I just want you guys to have a positive outcome when you start coaching yourself. So all of those things we discussed previously are very important metrics to keep track of. And of course, the nutrition is also very important. And then we'll get to the strength and the training and the tracking of your performance enhancing drug protocol after this. Don't worry, we'll talk about the PEDs also. Nutrition, look at it not only from a macro perspective, but mostly from a micronutrient perspective. Right? You need to make sure that you get all the micronutrients for this phenomenally muscular machine to work. And there's a gazillion processes in the body that depend on micronutrients and need calories to function optimally. Now, calories can come from a multitude of sources. In the end, it all boils down to ATP. And so whatever you eat eventually all gets broken down into a single compound producing energy. But the amount of micronutrients that you get for all this food that you're consuming are contributing to all of the other processes which eventually contribute to energy production, which keep all of the other processes going. So it's synergy in that sense. So you can say, I do, if it fits your macros and you only have whey protein, extra virgin coconut oil, and cream of rice, right? It would fit your macros, but you would certainly die within a month or so following that 3-food diet, right? Because they're pretty much devoid in the essential micronutrients that you need, albeit that cream of rice does have a decent amount of micronutrients. Eat varied, eat eat food that expires. Right? Nutrition is always a hot topic, so I won't bore you too much with it, but limit your food selection, at least on the days that you're eating for function, right? Eating for your goals. And then you can have your cheat meal with some ice cream or a cookie or a cheesecake or whatever dessert of choice once a week in a social setting so you don't turn into a hermit to aspire towards your goals. So during the time that you're eating for function, eat healthy food with a lot of micronutrients to complement your goals and make sure that you stay in a micronutrient surplus even when you're in a caloric restrictive state. 10% increases to your calories, whether up or down. During a cutting phase, your calories go down with 10%. That is just a metric over overall food intake. And again, 200 grams of protein will yield a different hormonal response than 200 grams of carbs. Now, there's completely different hormones involved in the metabolism of carbohydrates compared to the metabolism of protein. So as your calories come down, maybe the macros will need to shift. There comes a point in time where your carbohydrates are so low that they no longer act as protein sparing. So during the off season, for example, arbitrary numbers, right? Highly dependent on body weight, just arbitrary numbers. A very big guy can get away with 200 grams of protein and 1,000 grams of carbs, right? Because there's so many carbs in the picture that they act protein sparing, and you don't need so much protein on top of this phenomenal 4,000 calories of carbs that you're taking to facilitate recovery and protein synthesis and all that good stuff, resulting in muscle mass. But on the opposite side, during a cutting phase, as your carbohydrates comes down to facilitate fat loss, there comes a point where your protein needs to go up to compensate, because now you're also starting to use proteins for energy. So even though on paper, 1 gram of protein has 4 calories, whether you're in the off-season or contest prep, it really depends on how your body is using these proteins. And when your carbs and your fat intake is so low that you simply can't get enough energy out of that, and your body fat levels are so low, then your body is simply going to look for another energy source, being the protein, right? So your protein needs to come up to compensate. So you'll really have to play with the macros and figure out what works for you. Just to keep a simple guideline, a 10% caloric adjustment, whether you have to alter between the macros or not, a 10% caloric adjustment is usually enough to facilitate a change. So whether that's during the off season, when you're stalling and you can't get any stronger, right? And you don't want to increase the drugs yet, but you increase the food first. 10% more calories. Maybe a little bit of protein goes up, maybe more carbohydrates goes up, and a little bit of fat goes up. Right? I can make a whole separate video about this. I probably made a video about caloric adjustments already. If I did, I'll link it here. I can't remember what I talked about and which I didn't. I know I made an article about this in the Facebook group, but that is now defunct, and I'm slowly transitioning all the articles that I wrote for that group into YouTube videos for you guys to learn something from. And it's the same during the cutting phase, 10% caloric reductions. You might drop the carbs a little bit more and compensate by bringing the protein up. So overall, you get 10% less calories, but your protein might come up a little bit and your carbohydrate intake might come down significantly, right? It highly depends on how much progress that you're making. And I know it's a little bit difficult, but with experience, under the guidance of one of my good friends being coaches, right, you should be able to make those adjustments step by step as well. And if you're still not sure, besides the 10% caloric reduction, you can always increase the cardio with 5 minutes for your fasted cardio session and another 5 minutes for your post-workout cardio session, for example. Or you do the standing desk, or you walk in between sets, or you throw in all the fat loss aids which you could possibly source. Right? Of course, that eventually is going to detract from your health, but well, I'll leave that decision-making process up to you, because in the end, you're now your own coach. So 10% caloric adjustments, it usually facilitates a change. And when that change either makes you fat or you're now at poverty calories, right? Then you have to look into other things to change, because you can only eat so much or you can only starve so much. Strength progression is highly correlated with your food intake. A lot of you might think that strength and anadrol go hand in hand. And yes, they do go hand in hand, but anadrol will also detract from your appetite. And while that might be good during a cutting phase, during the off season, it's probably not desired. So please associate strength progression with food before you associate strength progression with drugs. Strength progression, follow progressive overload. I have many different articles on my website. I'll link them down below. Progressive overload is king. During the off season, it's way more easy to follow, because during a cutting phase, as calories come down and your body fat levels get less and less and less, you might use drugs which compromise your tendons a little bit, right? If you're doing a bodybuilding show, progressive overload just turns into maintenance, basically. So let's say you're benching 100 kilos at the end of the off season, just for example, right, for 10 reps. You might be able to increase that a little bit, right, depending on pharmacology involved. But just be happy that you're still benching 100 kilos for 10 reps by the time you finish your diet, right? Don't expect, especially at the higher levels, don't expect to make phenomenal progress. That's why we have the off season. During the off season, you make phenomenal progress in your strength. And then as you get stronger and stronger and more developed, you might be able to progress a little bit, but don't expect that to happen. And you could say, well, pro so-and-so just getting stronger, but to be honest, you're not a pro, I'm not a pro, and for the rest of us mortals, during a cutting phase, you're going to get weaker. So be happy with strength maintenance, but during the off-season, progressive overload is king. And again, when you start stalling in strength, you increase your food. This should facilitate more strength. More strength inevitably means more muscle mass. More muscle mass means more basal metabolic rate and a higher metabolic rate while doing activity, which should increase your appetite, allowing you to eat more. And at one point, eating more will still make you fat, and that's when you increase the drugs. That's the last step you increase. Man, I talked about this 1,000 times before, but it's still not common knowledge, even though pretty much every coach out there that is good and reliable and smart does it like this. Increase the food. You're getting stronger? Great. Coach, can I use anadrol? No, you're not there yet. No, bro, you're not at 6,000 calories yet. You can still eat more. Just eat more, even though the problem is with eating more now that I realize that the more you eat, the more at risk you are for developing non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So maybe we should limit the duration of an off-season to maybe 6 months and then do a pretty hard, aggressive cut, assuming that the muscle mass that you've accumulated is now matured. That's the first 3 months you're really trying to grow, and then you're just trying to mature that muscle, keep it on your frame for another 3 months. And then it's time to take a step back. So don't do a 2-year perma-bulk. That will definitely give you non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Maybe 6 months, right? Then you come off, you clean out, you take care of your health, you reduce your calories, and then maybe do a fibro scan, do some imaging to see if there's actually fibrosis or fat accumulating within your liver. And another metric to keep track of your health and make this bodybuilding journey last a little bit longer than seems to be the norm lately. Oh yeah, food and strength. Finally remembered what I was talking about. All right, so food comes up, strength comes up, and it happens a couple times. And then you need to increase drugs to facilitate more growth if you desire to keep progressing at that sense, right? Hopefully sleep apnea didn't set in yet, which is usually a huge red flag that your body gives you to say, hey, bro, it's enough now. Let's please let me have a good night's sleep. Okay, so during the a contest prep or cutting phase, it's a little bit more difficult, right? Because the calories keep going down. And then you use the drugs preemptively to compensate for the loss of strength that you can expect from bringing the calories down to keep your strength the same. So during the off season, again, food goes up, strength goes up, and then last drugs come up. And during a cutting phase, when you're trying to preserve as much muscle tissue that you built during the off season and preserve your strength as well, when fat loss stalls and calories need to come down, or cardio needs to come up, or both, or you have to throw in the fat burners, which might yield a little bit of an anabolic effect as well. Let's say you're close to stagnating. Instead of dropping the calories, which you can expect, right, by tracking all of your body weight changes and your progress pictures and your body fat levels using the calipers, right, and then pinching your lower back to keep track of everything. When you already know that the progression is starting to slow down, you preemptively increase the performance-enhancing drugs with an increment of maybe 250 milligrams. It's generally more than enough, right? Or 250 milligrams more test, or 150 milligrams more test and 150 milligrams more primo, for example. Just a small increment. You don't need to double the dose, guys. Just a small increment. It could be 1 milliliter, 2 milliliters, whatever that you're running. Just a small increment to facilitate more anabolism, increase protein synthesis for this ever-reducing amount of calories that you're having and reducing this protein-sparing effect that you otherwise get from carbohydrates. You compensate by increasing the PEDs, right? The protein synthesis increasing PEDs to compensate for that caloric reduction and keep your strength at least the same or potentially going up a little bit. And again, don't expect too much strength progression when you're at 6%, 4% body fat. So it's all step by step. You track everything that you're doing for your bodybuilding or fitness journey. And when you see your progression starts to stall, which usually happens a week or two before you start to plateau, then you make a change. And whether that's food intake or health supplementation or performance-enhancing drugs, or maybe reducing your volume, right? You go from a push-pull leg to a push-pull AB to a 4-day split, 5-day split, 6-day split even. So you really hit that body part hard, but with a limited amount of sets, or maybe more sets, higher volume, right? It's very difficult to pinpoint, and experience will tell you which is the correct approach, right? Give yourself a year or two following this kind of strategy, and then you will get the experience for yourself. So again, it's step by step. You make small adjustments based on your progression, and then you can prevent yourself from stalling. Right? That's the whole point as a coach. The client has a limited window of time where they want to get results. Now, first you have to reel them back a little bit to make sure that they get the results while staying healthy. Not all the coaches are like that. Some of the coaches that really don't care, and they will put you on 6 grams of shit if you desire to do so. The coaches which I recommended, myself included, and the good coaches in this space, they will make all of the adjustments needed before changing the performance-enhancing drugs, right? The diet and the training and the health supplementation and the blood work, and reviewing that with you, and optimizing every vector to facilitate anabolism and fat loss before we throw the kitchen sink at it, which, well, competitive bodybuilding at one point will be required because your body doesn't want to be 4% body fat without it, unfortunately. Well, unless you don't mind ending up looking very stringy at the end. So, right, we optimize all of these little metrics, keep track of everything, which is something you can do by yourself. It's not so difficult, but you have to take your emotions out of it. So instead of coaching yourself, right, with all this information, the pictures and the weight and the calipers and right, the tracking your macros and the micronutrients alongside of it, just look at that as somebody else, right? Whenever you do your measurements, take a day or two to really assess the situation. Have a look at it objectively, ideally with after a refeed when you feel a little bit less hungry, a little bit less emotionally involved, right? Especially when you're hungry or stuffing your face, so to say, right, during the off season, power shoving your way through the off season. Look at it objectively, make a decision on what the next week is going to look like, and then stick to that decision, right? You make one decision per week, one change per week, maybe a couple of different changes, right, that needs increasing your calories, for example, or reducing the cardio, or vice versa, or changing some PEDs. Right? A small step in each, so not 2 hours of cardio and 1,500 calories and 6 grams of shit. No, that's the wrong approach. Small adjustment to the cardio, smaller adjustment to the calories, perhaps a small adjustment to the PEDs, and then you give that a week to work, or maybe 2 weeks, or maybe 3 weeks, right? So if the first week you don't get results yet, give it another week. Be patient. Let your primobolan enanthate with a 2-week half-life kick in a little bit. Right? Give it some time. Be patient. And if you're in a rush and you don't want to undergo all of this trial and error by yourself, you don't want to coach yourself, well, then hire a coach. Obviously, right? If you're doing this within a limited window of time, hire a coach. You take the thinking out of it. You take the emotional investment out of it. You just listen, put your head down, and put in the work, right? And you don't get the experience for yourself because you're relying on somebody else, but it will certainly get the job done a lot more effectively with a lot less trial and error compared to figuring out by yourself, albeit that through trial and error and experimentation, you gain a world of knowledge, which you can then transfer to somebody else in the form of a YouTube video just like this. I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope it was beneficial. If it was, let me know down below in the comment section, right? All comments fuel the algorithm. Just keep them positive, right? So you don't break my heart. And if you still need some help and you don't really know what you're doing or you're stagnating, track all these metrics, send them to me by email. I will analyze it for you and give you an estimation how long we would need during a consultation to review your current situation, make some adjustments, right? And discuss that in 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or maybe 1 hour even. And then you should be good to go, right? To continue to coach yourself for the next couple of weeks. So instead of doing full-time coaching, I'm always available for consultations. And you decide when you need a consultation again, whether that's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or 1 hour, for example. Collect your questions, send me the data. I'll let you know how long we'll need. And then at your discretion, you can schedule another consultation, maybe 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, or never if you already reach your goals and you don't need further guidance from me, right? Just food for thought and a possibility for the guys that are absolutely need to get coaching by me, right? We can do that through consultations whenever you have enough questions to run past me. Okay, leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're looking for the most comprehensive guides to bodybuilding pharmacology so you can coach yourself using bioidentical hormones, those ebooks are on my website, vigoroussteve.com/shop. Direct link down below in the description section. Consultations always available, right? If you need some hands-on experience from yours truly, you can find the rates in the consultation section. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok at VigorSteve. A frontal bicep for the Vigorous crew. Just be patient. At one point, you can get cannons like these as well. But it will take some time, right? A little bit of trial and error, a little bit of assessing the situation on a week-to-week basis. And then before you know it, you have a pretty nice physique and the expertise to transfer that to somebody else. You've coached yourself, and now you can make money coaching somebody else also. Check out my Linktree with links and discount codes for all of the affiliates and sponsors that I'm associated with and believe in. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.